Valley Regional Transit to the legislature in particular, but other state leaders as well. In 2006, 2007, 2008, there was a big effort that included Valley Regional Transit, Compass, and some other both nonprofit and organizations around the state to try and see if there was an opportunity to get dedicated funding for transit of some kind. That effort landed on asking for a local option sales tax. A bill was written, work was done, and ultimately that came up for a vote. And at the last minute, there were changes proposed that would move it from a 60% vote to a 66 2/3 and move it from a statute to a constitutional amendment. And in the end, it didn't pass. So since that time, 2008, long time ago, really there hasn't been much conversation about transit at the legislature. No one has, in an organized way, gone and talked to various legislative folks about transit needs around the state and about the state of funding. And even on at a more local level, the organization that used to do that, the Community Transit Association of Idaho, had some changes in leadership and organizational structure, and they became less of a voice and frankly less obvious at the legislature. So we hired Giles and Giles Group last year, and Lance has been helping me organize meetings with individual legislators and also individual state leaders. And to date, we've talked to 25 people, legislators and a couple of state leaders, as well as some group meetings, legislative caucuses, and I've been to the Idaho Transportation Board, other places, not to advocate for any particular solution, but just to share the information about how unsustainable it is to fund transit in the way we do it in the state of Idaho. We are the only state that doesn't either have state dedicated funding or allow a local dedicated funding source. Every other state has one or the other or both. And as I've learned over the last 2 years, as I've been doing the budget process for Valley Regional Transit, it's both a very difficult process, but also a very unpredictable one. And it's very difficult to plan for the future. It's very difficult to make any commitments beyond next year because, frankly, don't know what that future will hold in terms of funding. So far, these conversations have been very productive. I'd say that we have yet to run into a legislator who hasn't been willing to listen, hasn't been willing to learn. I will say that almost all of them start, frankly, from a place of having absolutely no knowledge about transit, how it works, what the ridership is, who has transit systems around the state, who doesn't, what their role in it might be, what the state role in other places are. It's just not a conversation that's been had. So because we started so far behind, I guess I was hopeful that maybe there would be room to move something this year. I don't believe there probably is, but I do know that the only way we'll get there is to continue doing this education process. So thank you for your support in this year's budget to continue to have this consultant on board. And that's what I intend to do. And I'd ask Lance to come on up to the staff seat and let him say a few words, and then be happy to answer any questions that you have. What I will offer is that as you know, I've also been meeting with a group of private sector folks who are interested in the transportation challenges, especially in this valley, and they have agreed to also support an education effort around transit over the next year. I will hope that by the January meeting this year, we can come back to the full board with a proposal for at least a basic proposal for what the board would support in terms of what we'd like to ask of the legislature. I don't know exactly where that will go yet, and we'll bring more information to the executive board next meeting or the meeting after, and then have a discussion at the full board in January, hopefully with a recommendation for a very basic recommendation for what they could support asking the legislature for. So not moving really fast, because I think it's wise to do our homework and do the education first, but hoping to keep moving along. And with that, I'd let Lance make a few comments and then stand for questions.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Lance Giles. I'm the government affairs consultant for VRT. I'm also a contract lobbyist for a number of other clients as well. We have had, over the past year, we have had a lot of meetings with I shouldn't say all of, but we've had a lot of meetings with the key players, chairman and vice chairman of both the Senate and House transportation committees, the speaker, the pro tem, and others. What we found is that most legislators, as CEO Clegg mentioned, do not have a grasp of transit in the state, let alone what VRT stands for, what a RIPTA is, how they're funded, or anything like that. So what we've been able to do is initially just introduce ourselves, and then be a resource for questions that they have in the future. I'd say one of the biggest challenges, and I think we made a lot of progress, was getting the House Transportation Chairman and Representative Monks to come down to Valley Regional Transit's Main Street Station. They took a tour. Then we had a good half an hour meeting just talking about the challenges and opportunities of transit. We've got some big challenges for sure, but the only way we can get there, is CEO Clegg mentioned, is that we've got to start somewhere. And we're building that foundation, and we're going to continue to build that foundation over the next year. And if the opportunity arises, we'll be able to make some progress legislatively. But if they don't know, if the legislators do not know you and they don't have a relationship with you, they're not going to move anything for you. So that's what we're there for: build that trust and build those relationships. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you so much, Lance. It's good to see you, by the way. Mayor Kling.
Thank you. So I do have a question. So what I'm thinking is, we educate our legislators and the fact that Idaho is one of 2 states, is that correct, across the nation that has no funding for transit. So how does our model organizationally align with other states in reporting structures and what the entire model within a state looks like for public transportation? That's something I realize I don't know, and that might be helpful in the education process, not just funding, but really what is the reporting structure? Who do they sit under? And like the bigger picture of it. So just how do we differ?
Member Kling, from my background, I can't say. I'm not an expert on transit in other states. But I know CEO Clegg and her staff are, and so I'd probably have to punt that question.
And I'm happy to take it. And I would note that Lance's background includes work for Senator Crapo, Senator Kempthorne, the governors in the Northeast Corridor, as well as then work for Idaho Transportation Department and AECOM. So he has a deep transportation background, but in Idaho, that doesn't usually include transit, and it's no surprise that it doesn't here either. Great question, Mayor Kling. I will say this, couple of other efforts underway, one of which is Compass has engaged WSP to do a review of funding and structures around the entire United States on transportation, including transit. I've seen a final draft of that report. It's almost ready for publication. They got responses from 46 states on their survey, which was surprising even to them, the number of responses they got. So I don't know that I can answer specifically today, but once we get that report, I think we'll have a lot of answers. The one thing I will say is that as I've learned the transit industry over the last year, or at least more about the transit industry, I have learned that some states are incredibly involved in public transportation at the state level, and others are not at all, including Idaho. The state of Virginia, for instance, I was at a meeting recently where the administrator of their public transportation department within the Virginia DOT presented to us has myriad programs to help both local and the state on regional movement using transit. State of Colorado recently saw a presentation from them about their bus rapid transit program at the Colorado DOT. So their Department of Transportation actually has a bus rapid transit program that provides especially inner-city commute transit in the particular regions around the state. So I guess the good news is that there are a lot of models out there to look at. The bad news is right now, Idaho doesn't do much. That gets to my second point. I'll try to be quick here. The ITD Public Transportation Department did hold a conference in Coeur d'Alene last week, and there were representatives from transit agencies all over the state. They have committed to gathering economic numbers about transit around the state and continuing to do spotlight interviews and videos about each of the transit systems in the state of Idaho. The group of transit providers that were there also agreed to reorganize, lean into the Community Transit Association of Idaho and re-energize it to become a voice in advocacy. In doing that, we're going to help them by using our communications department to take the content that they provide us and create a profile of all the public transportation agencies in Idaho that we can use as part of our education effort.
Thank you so much for that information. Any other questions? Anybody online that had any questions or comments? Okay, very good. And I guess it's done right on time as it's 11:59. So there's nothing else on the agenda. So with that, we would stand adjourned. Don't go too far as we have another meeting in 30 seconds.
We have a meeting quickly, so grab some lunch. There's some great lunch here from Qdoba, and we'll see you back here in a minute.
Literally.
I've got a question. Is it the same link or do I need to use a different link?
There is a different link for it.
Great. Then I'll hang up here. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks.